You reread the message before you send it. You imagine how the conversation could go wrong before it even starts. Before a trip, you picture the missed flight. Before a relationship gets serious, you quietly imagine the breakup. Before sharing an idea, you see the rejection in your mind. You don't do it because you want bad things to happen. You do it because somehow it feels safer. From the outside, it can look like pessimism, like negativity, like you're manifesting the worst. But inside, it doesn't feel negative. It feels prepared. So why does your mind always go there first? First, let's say something clearly. You are not broken for thinking this way. Your brain is not trying to sabotage you. It is trying to protect you. Mentally preparing for worst-case scenarios is often a nervous system strategy. It's what happens when your body learns that being caught off guard hurts more than expecting disappointment. Somewhere along the way, unpredictability felt unsafe, and your mind adapted. The first place this usually begins is with control. Notice when this behavior shows up. You're waiting for test results, a reply, a decision, something outside your control. And instead of imagining the best, your mind runs simulations of everything falling apart. This is not random.
The brain struggles with uncertainty more than with negative certainty. Uncertainty leaves the nervous system suspended, alert, scanning. But if you assume the worst, you collapse the uncertainty. You turn a question mark into a period. It may be a painful period, but it is solid, and solidity feels stabilizing. For someone who grew up in environments where things changed suddenly, moods, rules, expectations, predicting the worst wasn't dramatic, it was adaptive. If you assume the good outcome and it doesn't happen, the fall feels steep. If you assume the bad outcome and it doesn't happen, it feels like relief. Your brain learns which emotional drop feels safer, and it chooses that one. There's also something deeper happening underneath. For many people, worst-case thinking is tied to attachment.
If love, approval, or stability once felt inconsistent, your mind may have learned to pre-grieve, to emotionally detach just a little before something can be taken away. You imagine the breakup while you're still in love. You imagine losing the job while you're still employed. You imagine the friend drifting away while they're still texting you. This is not because you want distance. It's because your system learned that sudden loss feels unbearable, so it tries to soften the blow in advance, like patting around something fragile. In childhood, this might have looked like being the mature one, the kid who didn't get too excited, the one who didn't ask for too much. Excitement meant risk. Hope meant vulnerability. Better to stay slightly braced, better to never fully lean in. That brace can follow you into adulthood. It becomes part of your identity. You're the realistic one, the cautious one, the one who doesn't get carried away. But underneath realism, there's often a quiet fear of emotional freefall. And this is where it gets interesting, because mentally preparing for the worst doesn't always feel anxious.
Sometimes it feels calm. Sometimes it feels logical. Sometimes it feels like you're just being smart. The brain has a way of disguising protective patterns as personality traits. I'm just practical. I just don't like getting my hopes up. I'd rather be surprised than disappointed. And in many ways, that makes sense. But there's another layer. Worst-case thinking can also be about identity protection. When you imagine failing before you start, you lower the emotional stakes. If you expect rejection and it happens, it confirms what you prepared for. If you expect acceptance and it doesn't happen, it can shake how you see yourself. So your mind chooses the version that preserves coherence. It says, we already knew this could happen. It maintains a story that feels predictable. Predictability, even painful predictability, feels safer than identity disruption. There's also the simple reality of overstimulation. Modern life moves fast. Notifications, deadlines, comparisons, news cycles. For some nervous systems, especially sensitive ones, imagining worst-case scenarios is a way of trying to map chaos. If I think through every possible failure, maybe nothing will surprise me. If I mentally rehearse every disaster, maybe I can avoid it. It becomes a rehearsal room in your head. You're not spiraling, you're planning, you're scanning. You're trying to reduce the number of unknowns.
and planning feels productive. But here's the part nobody tells you. The brain doesn't clearly separate imagined threat from real threat. When you repeatedly simulate worst-case outcomes, your body practices the emotion too. The tight chest, the sivor stomach, the quiet dread. You're not just preparing intellectually, you're conditioning your nervous system to sit in low-level alertness. And over time, that alertness can feel normal, almost like home. This is why when something goes smoothly, it can feel strange. You might even distrust it. When things are calm, you wait for the shift, because historically, calm might have been the moment before something changed. So your mind stays one step ahead, always scanning for cracks in the floor. But as you age, something subtle shifts. In your teens, worst-case thinking might have felt dramatic, intense, loud. In your 20s, it might have turned into strategic caution, career choices, relationship hesitations. Later, it can evolve again.
It becomes quieter, less about catastrophizing and more about bracing. You don't necessarily think everything will fall apart. You think, let's not assume too much. Life stage changes how this behavior looks. A teenager might imagine social humiliation. An adult might imagine financial instability. A parent might imagine losing stability for their child. The theme stays the same. The content changes. The brain adjusts the story to match your responsibilities, but the core function remains consistent. It regulates emotion. When you mentally prepare for the worst, you're reducing shock. You're creating a small emotional buffer. It's like placing a blanket between you and the unknown. The blanket doesn't stop the cold completely, but it softens the impact. It gives you the illusion of insulation, and sometimes that illusion is enough to settle the nervous system. Worst-case thinking can also function like an anchor. When hope feels too expansive, too airy, too uncontrollable, imagining the downside pulls you back to
the ground. It feels grounded, solid, almost mature. You're not floating in fantasy. You're standing in realism, even if that realism is tilted toward fear. And here's something gentle to consider. This pattern likely developed at a time when it truly helped you. Maybe you avoided embarrassment by anticipating it. Maybe you avoided chaos by predicting it. Maybe you learned to survive environments where being blindsided felt dangerous. Your brain logged the strategy as effective. It doesn't update automatically. It keeps running the program because once upon a time it worked. That doesn't mean it defines you. It means it served you. There's a difference. You are not a negative person. You are a person whose nervous system learned that preparedness equals safety. And safety is not weakness. It is one of the most fundamental human needs. The part of you that imagines worst-case scenarios is not trying to ruin joy. It is trying to prevent pain. It is the cautious friend in the back of your mind, the one who says, let's just think this through. Sometimes that friend speaks too loudly. Sometimes it interrupts moments that could have been lighter. But it is still a protective voice, not an enemy. If you've ever wondered why you can't just think positive like other people seem to, maybe it's because your brain values stability more than excitement. Maybe it has learned that emotional spikes, even good ones, come with risk.
So it chooses steadiness, even if steadiness sometimes feels heavy. You don't mentally prepare for the worst because you enjoy suffering. You do it because uncertainty once felt unbearable, because surprise once felt sharp, because hope once felt fragile, and your mind decided it would rather hold a controlled sadness than risk a sudden collapse. There is something deeply human about that. You are trying to create predictability in a world that rarely offers it. You are trying to soften impact before it happens. You are trying to stay one step ahead of loss. Not because you expect life to be cruel, but because you know it can be, and knowing that has shaped you. So if you see yourself in this pattern, notice the intention beneath it. Notice the intelligence. Notice the care. Your brain built this system out of experience, out of adaptation, out of survival. You are not defective for having it. You are not dramatic. You are not doomed to live in fear.
You are a human being whose mind learned to brace. And bracing, at its core, is an attempt to feel safe. There is nothing shameful about wanting safety, even if the way you pursue it sometimes feels heavy, even if the habit lingers longer than it needs to. It began as protection, and protection is not something to hate. It is something to understand. And when you understand it, even a little, something softens. Not because you force yourself to stop imagining worst-case scenarios, but because you see why you do. And being seen, even by yourself, can feel like the safest thing of all.